Okay, let's see. Our first question this week is from Steve. He says he keeps stuffing up and it's driving me crazy. Hi, Rob. I don't want to take too much of your time, but going keto for me has found me doing exactly what I feared I could do. I've been paleo for 5 or 6 years, and so has my wife. We have no kids at home, so grains and junky carbs are not an issue or even a temptation. I'm in the middle of doing the keto masterclass, which I'm savoring because I've been making some mistakes. 50 years old, work out regularly, doing either mixed kettlebell workouts or I do weight and resistance training. I like to do whole body workouts 3 times a week and can mix in some cardio in between. I've kept fit most of my life, and my goal is, as I age, to stay lean and keep mobile. Pretty simple. We live in Perth in Western Australia, so we have great weather and lots of sun. I work as a gardener in a private school, a job I love doing as I'm outside and moving all day. Not as hard as some sort of construction worker, but that can happen on any given day, just not every day. Coming from eating paleo, the transition for me has been pretty easy. As I went low carb and increased the fat I was eating, my wife liked the sound of it, so she hopped on board. She's doing great, in fact, better than me. We aren't really that worried about measuring ketones at this stage. It has been more about getting the diet right. But my issue is I love the food. For some reason, it has made me hungrier. Stocking our fridge and cupboards, I made sure that we had all we needed, and I wanted to see what I liked to eat also. So I've blown it on all sorts of things. I've had days where I ate too much thickened cream. One tub has 800 calories, and it is so easy to eat. I've blown it on nut butter and blown it on cheese. I can't believe it. At first, it was wrapping my head around the fat content, but I think I get it now. But I have put on body fat, which is so annoying. It's not a train wreck, but I feel like I'm in a rut and it's hard to get out. I don't want to quit because I can see I have felt the benefits. It's just with the fat content and my physiology, there seems to be no room for error. I listened to your podcast, and since listening, I've gone to the Keto Gains website and worked out my macros. I was still tracking somewhat, but some days I may have blown it by 500 or 600 calories. I've come so close to quitting, as for me, it seems to have been an easy way to get fat rather than leaner. I'm not sure that you can help me, and I'm not sure what else I could tell you. Diet-wise, I have intermittent fasted for 3 or more years with differing protocols. Doing 16 to 20 hours is pretty comfortable. I work out in the mornings, and I often don't eat until lunch or when I get home from work. My diet hasn't changed too much, except I've eaten cream, which I'm now over, adding more fat to my meals, cooking in butter, eating nuts, and doing other keto-style things. Apart from that, my diet is still pretty normal. I love veggies. I have for years done a version of Mark Sisson's big-ass salad, which would be my daily staple. Evening veggies could be broccoli with Brussels sprouts, maybe some kale and mushrooms. Also, we do milk, kefir, but I try to keep that to a minimum. If you have any suggestions, that would be great. Are there others that have had this sort of issue where going keto has made them fatter? Really enjoy your podcast, and thanks for all of the really useful info that you've put out. I've also read your books. Best regards, Steve.
You know, it's funny, when we were going through this, when I saw stuffing it up, I thought it was going to be a sinus issue, but so do you have any thoughts on this, like shooting from the hip?
Yeah, the first thing is he didn't mention protein at all, and it seems pretty focused on the fat, which, as you talk about in the Keto Masterclass, like, fat is a lever. Protein is first because that tackles it's the most satiating macronutrient, and he says he's hungry, so I'm wondering if he's not getting enough protein.
Right. That's kind of my first thought as well, the whole protein leverage hypothesis. And there's a lot of, this is where it gets it's so hard to unpack this stuff, because a lot of people, if they come from a kind of traditional Western diet, they shift to low carb or even paleo, but let's just say low carb. And instead of being on these carb roller coasters all the time, you just get this like nice, even energy, even blood glucose levels, whether it's ketone fueled or not. It's just like you're not on the ups and downs. And generally they notice that they're not as hungry. But I think that can kind of give way over time to being low protein. And again, with that whole protein leverage hypothesis idea, whether you eat low carb or low fat, if you eat adequate protein, you're probably going to be pretty good, all other things being equal. But if you're skinny on the protein, then your body is going to stimulate hunger and you're going to tend to eat more food. And there is kind of a reality that one of the dangers of kind of keto eating is that the bulk of the food is pretty calorically dense. You could go pretty crazy on plain sweet potatoes or something like that, just the calorie density is not anything.
Extra wedge of cheese, depending on how you measure a wedge.
Right, wedge.
Is a significant number
Could
of
be
calories.
A significant chunk of calories. So the protein would definitely be a thought. An additional thought he seems to be kicking the bulk of his calories to later in the day. So I would, following a lot of Bill Lagakos's work and things that we're learning around time-restricted eating, I would try shifting more of the calories earlier in the day. All things being equal, it seems like people generally do better with that. And then one final piece is thinking about your electrolyte intake, in particular sodium. So Tyler and Louise shot me an interesting paper the other day. So there's a lot of folklore in the keto world, which I kind of alluded to, that we get this kind of appetite suppressing effect while in ketosis and while fasting and stuff like that. And there's definitely truth to that. But when ketone salts have been studied kind of head to head with ketone esters, it's interesting that esters produce higher levels of blood ketones, but they do not have an appetite blunting effect, not the way that ketone salts do. Now, this is totally speculative, but one of the key features of ketone salts is they have a shitload of salt in them. And we've often kind of joked that, when people are like, man, I feel great using ketone salts, it's because they're actually getting a decent whack of sodium in particular, in addition to the other electrolytes. So I would really be fastidious on protein, and then also make sure that you get at least that 5 grams per day of sodium specifically.
Especially because you're in a warm climate, you're outside all the time,
Yeah, so those are some biggies in that. So I guess the 3 are be on point with protein, make sure that you're getting your electrolytes addressed, and then finally try shifting more of the calories earlier in the day versus this later in the day eating schedule.
Okay. So Steve, do all that and then report back.
Ping back and let us know. Yep.